Welcome back to For Sure Pod. Today's guest is a screenwriter, actress, and most importantly, viral TikTok creator, Julia Yorks. She's written for Netflix, Lionsgate, DreamWorks. So if you've ever binge watched a show, she's probably behind it. Now she's navigating single life in New York, most notably Brooklyn, and helping new writers break into Hollywood. Before we start, quick shout out to lifespark.bio because your sperm deserve better. Quick, deep question to start off the podcast and break the ice. Do you believe in soulmates?
Wow, that's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know if I believe in soulmates. Do you?
Yes.
I love that. But you probably don't believe that they have to be just like one person.
Yeah, I think that's an important discrepancy. I think there are soulmates. I don't believe you have one soulmate, singular. The reason I would say this is my parents met and married in 7 months, and they're still married 40 years later. So it's got to be somewhere in the universe, but we haven't found it yet.
Very true. I thought I did. You know what's so funny? I think that I do believe that there are certain people who come into your life and it's very much for a reason. And I also think that there are certain people that you just feel like you've known them for way longer than you have. And so maybe that's a soulmate, but I don't know. We've talked about this offline. I feel like there are certain people that you just love very quickly. It's like, I feel like part of, for me, this new dating process is learning who I love as a person versus who I'm actually in love with. And I think I made that mistake in my 20s. And I'm realizing that I made that mistake and trying not to make that mistake now.
100%. I think there's something deeper that I think we don't fully understand with attraction. And I think it's wavelengths. I think that there are people who you meet who you are just very attracted to and you don't know why. And I think that has to do with your energy, and I don't know how to quantify other than that.
Yeah. Well, we really started
we gotta go deep.
And intense.
We gotta just rip the Band-Aid off. I'm wearing a hat. That's why it's my protection to go deep. I love it. So, Julia, what were you like as a child?
Very precocious.
Ooh, good word.
Yeah, thank you. When I was 9, I wrote a book about my town called The Kid's Guide to New Hope, and the entire town rallied around it to self-publish it, like to help me pay for that. And it was in like the local Barnes and Noble and the local bookstore. And then the people from Chicken Soup for the Soul found out about it and approached me, and I wrote a chapter in that book. So precocious, loser, like I think are all like this one and the same.
You're definitely not a loser, but you grew up in Pennsylvania, right?
We did.
And
yeah.
What was that like? What was the vibe?
New Hope is a very cute little small town that actually, I think it was Condé Nast or someone just some big travel place just posted an article about how is this sleepy Bucks County town the New Hamptons? Kind of wild. So Gigi Hadid moved to my town. So now Bradley Cooper lives there. I think Tina Fey has a house there. Leo's got a place there. It's pretty wild. And it sounds super bougie, but it's like a little farm community. And then there's a really cute town by the river that when I was growing up was like part colonial. We and still do have like a very big gay population. And then also we had like motorcycle gangs that would drive through and get beers at the local pub every Sunday. So like a very eclectic, artsy place. And that's now becoming a big like wedding destination and tourist destination. So cool for the town, not good for trying to park when you go to visit.
So all these celebrities are coming. Is there a big lake? What do people do?
It's right
on the river.
It's right on the river. Yeah.
New Hope, Pennsylvania. Wow,
Yeah.
it is it's a big river. I'm looking at it right now on Google machine.
Yeah. Right down the way from where Washington crossed.
Wow.
If that we reenact it every year.
Great history. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, and then so you grew up there. Then what? Like, how was college? And then did you move straight to New York? Like, what happened?
So what did I do? I was a day student at a boarding school. So that's kind of a fun fact. I went to the Lawrenceville School for fun. And then I took a year off in between high school and college, took a gap year and moved out to LA to audition. And that was 2007, 2008, which was a writer's strike. So
Yeah,
really
great
bad
timing.
timing, terrible. Yeah. So I worked 2 jobs out there and I interned, and then I had deferred from Northwestern. So I went to Chicago. It was really cold. And so I transferred to USC and did 2 years there. So graduated in 3 years total. And yeah, that was my high school and college experience.
Amazing. Okay. And then so you moved to LA to be an actress. And then how did you transition into screenwriting?
Momentum.
Ooh, inertia.
Like I always just try to kind of inertia. Yeah, I just try to follow. I'd always been a writer since my Kid's Guide to New Hope days. And yeah, so I on my year off, I interned at a production company for these guys named Chuck and Larry Gordon. They did the first 2 Die Hards, Field of Dreams, like really just legends, and also Waterworld. So less so, but we all have our flops. And so really started to learn kind of the ins and outs of writing, read a lot of scripts, did a lot of coverage. And when I graduated from college, when I transferred to USC, I was a screenwriting minor. And I went to Chuck when I graduated, and he said, "What are you working on?" And I pitched him the idea for this movie called The House Dad, which was basically Mrs. Doubtfire, but set in a sorority. So like the dad wanted to keep an eye on his freshman daughter who was going nuts and dressed up as the house mom. In 2011, it was hilarious. I don't know if now it would fly, but it was really fun. And so, yeah, he heard the pitch and he was like, "I love that. I want to read your pages." And I sent them to him, and he said, "I'm pleasantly surprised. Like, you can do this. Keep going." And so, yeah, so that's really how I started writing, because I got that encouragement.
That's awesome. And if you could go back and give baby writer Julia one piece of advice, little New Hope Julia, what would it be?
I mean, it would have been pick a genre and stick with it. Like, be more specific and targeted in my approach. But I didn't know. I mean, I came from New Hope, Pennsylvania, which while now is filled with celebrities, at the time wasn't. My mom, was a special ed teacher, and my dad was a carpenter, and I had no idea what I was doing. Like I grew up acting as a kid, but I had very small parts in big things. And if you don't live in LA or understand how the industry works, which I didn't, I was just like, "Oh, this sounds like a good idea. Let me write that." And so I think it took me a lot longer to get to where I am, but now it's a positive because, I can write anything that anybody asks me to.
Yeah. And I know now.
But
yeah, I love it. It's beautiful. And I know you are now helping writers, which I definitely want to get into. And one thing that I've been thinking a lot is when I played football, they talked a lot about the 10,000 hour rule, right? It's you do something for 10,000 hours and you'll be a pro at something, right? And then I've heard recently about the 25,000 hour rule, which separates, the pros from the legends, the 0.1%. Do you think there's validity in that? Relating to football, Andrew Luck, who is probably the most famous Stanford football player, would always say, you get better at football by playing football. Do you get better at screenwriting by just simply screenwriting?
100%. I think, well, actually, that's a great thing. Like, I think that, yes, you get better at football by playing football, but I also assume that there's something to, you guys, I watch sports movies. That's about like my whole knowledge of what it looks like in a locker room. But like, don't you watch game tape and try to like determine things that you did wrong? And you have coaches and people who mentor you and people who, so you're not just playing without getting better. It's like if you go to the gym and you keep doing the workouts, but you keep doing it wrong, you can continue to work out. And so enough with the sports metaphors, but it's kind of the same thing, right? So you can write a bunch of scripts. And I think that that is really important. I look at things that I wrote 12 years ago, and there's still some good nuggets of gems in there, but ultimately the way that I write now and how fast and, my first drafts feel like fifth drafts from, where I was 12 years ago. But there are a lot of people who just keep writing scripts and they keep writing them the same way. And maybe they get faster at it, or maybe they feel like they're getting better at it, but the same issues are still there if you don't kind of address those core problems or those core like skill gaps. So yes and no.
It's a great point. You can't really improve in a vacuum. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, you just said it way more concise than I did.
So looking back at your 12-year-old writing, there is some threads that were probably wonderful and maybe some things that you can improve on. Do you think 12 years from now, you'll say the same about your writing today?
%. And I also think that there's something, I had an acting teacher once who said, I guess like somewhat crudely, he didn't mean it this way, but it was like how you need life experience. Like it's really hard to do a scene where you're in love with someone if you've never had sex, right? That was kind of like the gist of the conversation. And I think that as you get older and as you have more experience, you are able to, like, writing and screenwriting is so much about, at its core, whether it's set on Mars or, there's a lot of car chases, it's really about like the core human story. And so if you've had more experience navigating that core human story, I think it's, just a lot more potent.
Yeah, totally. And what's the biggest misconception you think about screenwriting?
That it's glamorous, or that it's, I would say probably the biggest one just generally is that the person whose name on the page wrote every word. And really what's so interesting is whoever's name on the page, you have very little idea how much they wrote unless they're the filmmaker, like the writer director. If you are staffed on a TV show, the showrunner is like the big cheese. And so often, even if you write an episode and it has your name on it, I've been on shows where every single word that I've written was rewritten, or I've had shows where every line that I wrote was mine. And in movies, it's even more intense because like you are like fifth banana. It's producers and the director is kind of the top person. And they do an uncredited pass often. And yeah, so you really just have no idea how much or how little the writer actually wrote.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I spoke to an actor friend of mine recently, actually on this podcast. Yeah. We talked a lot about rejection and how when you're, as an actor, trying out for a role, you don't get any feedback. Is that the same in writing where if they say, nope, Julia, we're not going with your script, and then they just don't say anything and you just get ghosted? Or do they actually give you feedback?
It depends on what level you're at. So if you're an emerging writer and you're querying agents and managers and production companies, 9 times out of 10, you'll get no response. Or if you enter a contest, you won't get a response. But for me, if I'm up for a job or if someone read the script, I will typically get some sort of feedback, but them not buying it or not moving forward with it or not hiring me is that rejection. But I will say, being on both the acting and writing side is so funny. I remember going into my first audition after having gone out on general meetings as a writer. And a general meeting is like, they've read your script, they like your voice, but they don't want to buy it. And they just want to meet you. It's kind of like a vibe check. So you spend about an hour chatting with the executive and they give you their spiel and you give them your spiel and that's it. And then I went to an audition and I think it was for CSI. And I walked in and they were like, all right, name? And I was like, Julia Yorks, hi. And okay, great. Do the lines. Okay, great. And then I did it and they went, okay, thank you. And I was like, wait, don't you want to chit chat a little bit? Because I was so used to these general meetings where, I could win them over with my personality if we just had time to talk, and no, it's very just, okay, next. And I do appreciate, I feel like in writing, it is a bit more of getting to know you as a person than it is with acting.
Do you think that's because you're iterating more with them versus, I guess if you're an actor, you look what you look like and you can't really iterate on that. And I know it's probably a big part of it versus Julia, they're hiring you to grow with the script, maybe write a pilot, and then there's going to be more collaboration.
Yeah. I think that is probably true because the script is the most important part of the process, right? It's the starting block from which the entire project is built from. And as an actor, you're kind of coming on board late in the game.
Yeah. I didn't realize how much the producer really does set the tone. I've never been in a movie, but I was on some dating shows recently and they were producers and they were really running the ship. They were, Conrad, do this. And I just, you don't really realize how structured things are until you actually get onto a set, I feel.
Well, especially in reality TV, producers are a huge part. I mean, producers are producers and editors both work in tandem to craft the narrative. So it's almost like, they are trying to make stuff happen, and then the editors reverse engineer stories based on what they were able to create. I want to hear more about this dating show. How fun is that? Or how fun was it? Maybe it wasn't fun at all.
Yeah, I'll give the quick background. So I went on this show called Updating. You can look it up on YouTube and TikTok. They blindfold you, and then they ask you questions, and then a girl comes, and basically at the end they say, do you want to go on a date with this girl? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And she said, yeah, too. And then afterwards, we went into the green room, and there was like 10 cameras in there filming like this close to my face. What is going on? And the producer comes up and says, hey, you said you want to go on a date with this gal. We'll set it up. We'll make it happen. Let's do it. And I said, sure. So then the next week, this camera crew came to my apartment, set up this Michelin star chef dinner. And I learned that the girl who I met on Updating was mid-filming another show about late bloomers, about people who are figuring it out. And so they filmed our date for that other show. And it was so prescriptive. They literally would like say, cut, Conrad, no, don't ask her about that. Ask her about her family. And I opened the door literally 10 different times.
You're in LA. That's for sure.
I don't know.
That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But speaking of just the process, writer's block.
Yeah.
Is that real?
It is. Yeah, 100%. I mean, some of it is just like, ugh, I don't feel like working today because it is my job. But you definitely get stuck, for sure. Sometimes the creative juices are just not juicing.
Yeah, that's fair. How do you get out of it? Do you just go to your coffee shop and get tea like you always do?
Sometimes take a big walk. I think walk, shower, and watching, I look this way because that's where my TV is, watching like a comp. So some sort of, a show that is similar to mine in terms of tone or plot or storyline, whatever, that's typically usually helps me figure it out. Just taking time away from it.
And speaking of, this is great advice. So you are crushing it on social media. You literally inspired me, by the way, to start posting on TikTok. I still haven't started posting on Instagram. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm close.
You have to do it. It's embarrassing, but you have so many more followers on Instagram. And honestly, Instagram is where people monetize the most. I have a really hard time doing it. And I'm sure yours is the same reason. It's because like, I actually know these people. And especially talking about, my new starting over life, as former family members are on that. Like, I feel, there are certain things that I feel weird cross posting.
Totally. I get that. I was thinking about just making a new Instagram and calling it Creative Conrad, and then just posting all my TikToks there.
I love that.
And then I'm sure once I rip the Band-Aid off, I'll start doing it. But when did you realize
But you should do it because you have so much of it, but this is like, your platform is so big already that it's hard to grow that. So you should just do that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just
I'll be convinced. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Okay. Great.
When did you realize that social media, because I feel like you started somewhat recently getting really big and getting into it. When did you realize it was taken off, and how do you think about posting things on TikTok and Instagram to build your business?
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. I think for me, it was like I started social media, and then because of that, a business grew out of it. I started posting. I was a lurker on TikTok in 2020, 2021. And then I think towards the end of 2021, I started posting, and it was all screenwriting advice because everyone else who was on the platform was either an older gentleman who would, or, not just one older, there were multiple who, had broken in like 20, 30 years before. And I just felt like the landscape had really changed, particularly because of COVID. And for like film guys who were still in film school. And I was like, ooh, that information is actually wrong, what you're saying. And so I was like, I don't know, I feel like I have additive information into this conversation. So I just started posting screenwriting advice. I probably, hitting 10 or 20 some thousand followers, like that was always pretty cool. feedback. I had somebody say to me somewhat recently, like getting recognized by people is always really funny. But I had someone say to me somewhat recently, I went to film school and I've actually learned more from your TikToks than I did at school. And it's like, that's so nice. So I don't know, that kind of stuff makes me feel like, okay, I'm doing something that's valuable, because my whole thing is I just, I want to demystify how to break in because it is so hard, but then also try to tell people, like, here are all the lessons that I learned and the mistakes that I made so that you don't have to. But yeah, it's been fun. I need more of a strategy, probably. I get a little burnt out. Like, I'll post a bunch and get excited by it. I try to post once a day, but that doesn't always happen. Particularly the last year of my life has just been so crazy. And that was also kind of a big thing. Deciding to post more personal stuff as opposed to just screenwriting advice has been really gratifying and also scary. But ultimately, I feel like pretty positive.
Yeah. I love that. I also went through a phase trying to post every day. It's very hard. And
So hard.
I think you just said you should just post it. Literally just post stuff. And it's so funny where I've tried to do A/B tests because I'm somewhat analytical I'm going to test this one with music and this one that's a little bit more refined. And I swear to God, Julia, the one that's always worse always gets more views.
Yeah. Whenever I look my ugliest, that's when it reaches the most people.
What is the algorithm? What is the algorithm? Yeah, I started, you inspired me to start doing this. And I did a 30-day TikTok challenge in January. I have a screenshot. I started with 67 followers and it was just my friends. And then I sent out my Christmas cards and that got a couple. And then I made this one TikTok and we talked about how my mom texted me and said, hey, your brother gave you a +1 to his wedding, but you really shouldn't bring someone unless it's the absolute love of your life. And it just blew up. And I firmly believe it blew up because it's polarizing. And to have people arguing in your comments, I just think it's a lot of velocity.
Yeah, no, it's engagement. And so if you say something that's a little polarizing or 100%. And we talked about this a little bit, but I'm so curious, that doesn't feel polarizing to me, but I guess people have opinions about everything. So
I totally agree. In this TikTok sphere, I have to ask, what's the wildest message or DM or comment you've gotten?
A lot of sugar daddies, a lot of old men. Yeah, but honestly, not as many as you would think. I say a lot, but honestly, they're kind of few and far between, but I do get them. So it's a little offensive. You are being flooded with women who want to fly across the country for you.
I've gotten some interesting stuff for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm sure. There's an interesting group that I've seen of single guy TikToks, and they have hundreds of thousands of followers. They're predominantly women, and every, it's like, I need a date to a wedding, or I need, I'm tired of, dating. And it's like, hi, volunteers tribute, pick me, that the whole comments. And it's so wild. And in my TikToks, when I talk about, getting divorced or I don't really talk about dating that much, but, just kind of these changes in my life, it is a lot of women who are very kind and sweet. So I'm down with that. I'm down with my engagement.
Yeah, you have a great audience, for sure. And you just recently froze your eggs.
I did. Oh my God. Oh yeah. I was like, how'd you know that? Yeah, I did. I did freeze my eggs. I'm about a week out of it. So fun. That I think that, you're in the fertility space. Male fertility.
No, I think it's great. I've never frozen my eggs. I don't have eggs, but I've heard it's a really tough and intense process. Was that the same for you?
Yeah. So I actually froze embryos when I was married a couple of years ago. And so I actually found it harder then. I think probably in part, I'm just like, nothing can hurt me now. This is fine. I can do anything. And yeah, so it wasn't as bad as it was before, probably a little bit emotional just in this new phase of my life. But I'm glad I did it because I think it's so interesting. I'm 36 and I always thought I'd be married and have kids by now. But now that I'm in this place, Like, I want some time to just breathe and figure out what I want and be a little selfish for a while. But you have that ticking clock in the back of your head. And so this just kind of helps to alleviate that a little bit, because otherwise I would feel like finding a partner had to be at the top of my list. And now I just kind of want to like figure out what I want for a bit.
Totally. What's been the best part about restarting your life?
The best part, I think, is, I knew what my life was going to look like, or what I thought it was going to look like. And I was happy with that. But I think there's something incredibly exciting about not knowing what comes next. And none of us know what comes next, right? Like, even if we think that we know, we don't. So, but I was like, okay, when I have kids and I'm married to this person and this is the way that my life is going to look. And now I have no idea what my life is going to look like, which is scary in a lot of moments, but I'm trying to reframe that fear into excitement. I say this in my TikTok sometimes because you never know. It can just turn out better than you ever imagine. I mean, it could turn out worse, but hopefully it turns out better.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting way to look at it. It's you had a ceiling for that relationship, I suppose. Of course, people can change and grow, but now there is effectively no ceiling. You don't know how or where you're going to end up.
Yeah. And I'm also, I'm a different person than I was this time last year, because it's almost a year now. And I don't think that I would have grown into this person, or so much of it is like grit and mental fortitude, right? Too, that you just, I don't think that I would have made this transformation if I didn't have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I remember I called you one time and I was really bummed that this girl wasn't texting me back. And you said, it's okay to just let things be what they are. And sometimes things are just a segmented part of time that are beautiful. And that's it. And when you go on a great date, say that was a great date. I love it for what it is, but not tying to that moment to future expectations, I think is really great.
I'm really wise.
You're very wise and humble too.
It's true. No, but I think, so often, I think particularly in dating, we really kind of extrapolate out all of the different scenarios. You meet someone and you are a romantic, and I always did this too. You meet someone and you go on a great date, and what are our kids going to look like? Where are we getting married? And now I just say, that was a really fun night. I'm glad I went. Or, and you can say it in the reverse too, right? Like, ugh, that was a really bad date. And it doesn't mean that you're never going to find your person and that you're going to die alone. It was just one isolated bad date.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And have you had any rom-com type moments since being single? That's a good reaction.
I have, but I don't know if they're fit for the. I'll tell you.
That's fair. Tell me offline. I'm excited to hear about it.
Oh, no, I think, I just have a very different perspective. It's something so funny. I know what I'm looking for, but to be honest, I don't think that I'm ready for it. But I also know very quickly when something is not right. And all of my girlfriends laugh because if I go on a date or if I meet someone, they'll say, how was it? And I'll say, he's not my next husband. And they're like, well, how do you know? What, you didn't even give him a chance. I said, I know, because I know specifically what it is I want. I know how I will feel. But, I think for some people, that would mean that's not my next husband or that's not my wife. So that's it. And to be honest, that's not the phase that I'm in. I'm just kind of out there meeting people, and if connections are fun, even if I know that person is not my person, it's kind of like, okay, like it's still, if things are fun and we enjoy each other's company, like I think that's fine. That's the place that I'm in currently. And so I think it's a very different place to be than most people who are in their mid 30s, particularly as a woman. So, Yeah, but I hear people talking all the time about how the dating pool is awful and men suck and, everyone's awful. And I don't know, that just hasn't been my experience. I've met a lot of great people who are just not my people. And yeah, I don't know. I haven't had a bad
Yeah.
experience, really. Well, that's not true. I've had a bad experience, but but overall, they've been positive
And
experiences.
over half of marriages now end in divorce, but over 80% of people who have been married get remarried, which is interesting. And
Yeah.
so for someone who maybe is going through a tough relationship, what would your advice to them be?
Try again next time, I
It's
guess.
been-
No, I don't know. Honestly, I'm not an advocate for divorce. It's not a thing that I ever wanted to do. My parents have been married for 47 years this year, and I always just thought, it's till death. We're riding through the good times and the bad times. And for me, it was kind of like divorce is not an option, because then if you take an option off the table, you kind of just figure it out. And so it's so interesting to be getting divorced, because that was kind of always my philosophy. And so, I mean, I've talked to some people who have said, I'm on the brink of divorce. What do you suggest? And for me, I'm always, the issues that people have said to me, obviously if it's abuse or some, something that is like a thing that cheating, get out. But when I talk to people, I'm always like, well, what did you love about the other person? Right? Like, because you obviously loved each other enough to marry each other. So how do you try to get back to that? And I don't know, I'm not a marriage and family counselor, so don't take my advice. But I guess the thought is, what I have heard from my TikTok audience when I've talked about my divorce, so many women and men too, who have said, I got divorced 2-3 years ago, and now I'm in a new relationship and I'm the happiest I've ever been. And, so that's exciting. It's reassuring. I know that I won't be the same person in my next relationship that I was in my previous relationship. And also, you're looking for different things than you were previously. We talked about, and I always think about this, and I reference this so much, the triangle of things that you need in a relationship, where it's like best friends, intimacy, partners, and how if you're really lucky, you get all three, but what you need is two. And I think that so many women are taught, well, all you need is your best friend. And something that I've learned, particularly over this past year, is that I have a lot of friends. And so that's not going to be the hard part. I think it's finding a partner, particularly as you get older, as you start having kids. That's why so many women, it's that book, Fair Play, about dividing up the tasks in marriage and relationships when you have kids, because that ends up becoming so incredibly important in this partnership. That's really what marriage is.
Totally. And on the triangle, best friend, partner, and then intimacy, I agree you only need two, but things change. And so you need to be adaptable, that if you lose one, then you need to grow and have one of the other ones come in to play.
Yeah, 100%. It's not a fixed pyramid. It can, kind of evolve over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or at different times in life.
Yeah. Yeah. So when are you going to write the Julia York's biopic?
Honestly, I always tell people, don't write your own story, because none of us are as interesting as we think that we are. And so what you do is you write stories that are inspired by either experiences that you've had or emotions you felt, like snippets of your life, but that are not based specifically on your life. So for example, I'm working on right now a horror movie that is set at a wedding in Italy that a newly divorced friend has to go to. And that was a real life situation, but it was not a horror movie, right? I had to go to a friend's wedding in Italy a few months after getting divorced, which was, a gorgeous wedding, so much fun, but hard. My own horror. But how do we translate that? Oh, well, let's translate it into a more emotional story, right? So taking your own experiences and translating it. I'm currently doing a little bit of a polish on the script that I wrote that was on the blacklist last year called The 7 Guys You Date Before Marriage, that totally, it just, I was not, I was married when I wrote it. So I had it's not like life imitating art in any way, shape, or form. But now going back, because when I finished it a year ago, I was a different person. I hadn't dated in 10 years. And so now kind of going in and polishing it up with some anecdotes that I've experienced or with some new perspectives, it just makes the story even.
No, I remember you posted that 7 Guys You Date Before Marriage, and I'm very excited to watch it someday, soon.
Well, fingers crossed. I hope so.
Yeah. No, I love it. So, okay, we're gonna move on to something fun. This is the speed round. So I'm gonna give you a short question, and you're just gonna give me a one-word answer. Okay.
I'm not brief. Brevity is not my strong suit.
We'll start simple. Pen or keyboard?
Keyboard.
Favorite font?
Courier.
Yeah, I guess writers will.
It's the typing.
Least favorite font?
Comic Sans.
Classic. Movie title to your life?
The 7 Guys You Date After Marriage.
Hey, that's good. That's good.
It's the sequel.
Favorite New York neighborhood?
The West Village.
Cute. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Nice. Acting or writing?
Writing.
Plotter or pantser?
I had to think about what that was.
Yeah, me too. Cats or dogs? Easy. I should have started with this one.
Dogs.
Favorite season?
Summer.
Would you rather date an introvert or an extrovert?
Extrovert. I got to get out of the house.
I love it. Action or...
To watch or to experience? Romance. I'm a big softie.
What's your favorite word to write? Do you have a favorite word?
I don't have a favorite word. I have a couple of phrases that I use. I always am like a birthday party in full swing, or, the city of brotherly love and all of its glory. Like if I'm like New York City and all of its glory, or wherever the setting is, I use that a lot. And then like a blank party in full swing. I use those a lot.
I like that. Do you write better in the morning or in the evening?
Yes. Morning.
Nice. You got to get your tea. Get your tea. I will say,
I got to get my tea.
When I watch your day in the life videos, you wake up early.
That's divorce.
Just divorce energy.
My entire brain is rewired. It's so crazy. Wake up 5:30, even after daylight savings. I cannot go to sleep, or I cannot stay asleep. I wake up so early, and I go to bed so early as well. I used to watch so much television. So, I mean, it's my job, right? I cannot even get through an episode of Real Housewives. I have to watch it in like chunks. I just have no attention span. It's actually so crazy.
Fascinating.
Like none of us have attention spans anymore, but it's really wild. So yeah, so I work a lot because it keeps me focused. I don't know. There's definitely probably is problematic, and I should get that looked at.
Yeah.
That's for now. It's helping me have a lot of time to write.
I wonder what that is. Because before, did you sleep in? I'm fascinated.
More, 7:38,
right.
But now I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning. It's crazy. I know. I'm up really early. I know. Even if I go out and I'm out and about, I'm still 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's wild.
Okay. We'll do a follow-up pod on that.
Crazy.
We'll have a sleep doctor come.
When is my sleep gone back to normal? Yeah. Do you have a supplement for that?
For sure. No, I actually do have a really good sleep supplement over the counter on Amazon. I'm going to send it to you. It's totally, just don't take melatonin. I'm very anti-melatonin.
Really? I was going to say, I don't want to promote another brand, but unfortunately the Kourtney Kardashian gummies have been a lifesaver for me, which I think have melatonin in them. Maybe it's magnesium, but they have like a no stress gummy, like with ashwagandha. So I take that in the morning.
I actually took that at your apartment when I was there last. Yeah, the no stress. I was chilling.
Yeah, they're good. They're good. Yeah, they're like.
Yeah.
I feel like they really help.
It's good vibes.
Yeah.
Okay. First date. Do you want more spontaneity or more of a planner? It's tough.
Ooh, that is tough. I like if they have a plan, but they spring it on me spontaneously.
Yeah. You like surprises?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Boozy
I
brunch
do.
or happy hour?
Both?
I love it. That's a good answer.
I mean, if it's a weekday, obviously happy hour. I would say the weather's turning nice in New York, so a boozy brunch outside sounds delightful.
What's the best advice you ever received?
Wow, it's a great question. Screenwriting advice, entertainment industry is don't be precious. That was from Chris McQuarrie, who wrote and directed all the Mission Impossibles, the more recent ones. Life advice? Oh, my friend Tess said all the time you have is all the time you need, more in regards to like when you're so stressed and you're like, I'm never going to get all this done. And I really love that. And also just, it sounds so cliche, but the only way out is through has been, unfortunately or fortunately very true. And so sometimes you just gotta live it to get over something. But it's very cliche.
Beautiful though. How much
It
of
is.
screenwriting
Cliches and
is
cliches
talent versus practice?
100% talent. No, I'm kidding. I think it's a learned skill. I think you can learn the craft of screenwriting. But yeah, there are some people who have an innate talent, but I think that the talent can be honed by watching a lot of TV shows and movies.
For sure.
So, yeah.
For sure. Speaking of a quick tangent, what do you think of all the made for Netflix movies recently?
If I were being paid to write them, I would love them.
Yeah. Just write something with Kevin Hart, like going on an adventure.
I mean, sure. Look, nobody sets out to make a bad movie. And that is, I think, the biggest thing that people don't see or understand. Everyone is working to try to make something good. And there are just so many moving parts and so many reasons why sometimes something doesn't work the way it should. I'm a firm believer that the script is usually pretty sound as the production starts to roll. It is the most vetted part of the process. And, just as stars get added and directors and execs and, budget constraints and filming issues and all of these things start to pile on, that's what ends up kind of changing or shaping the story. And so, yeah.
Here's a fun one. Kristen or Aaron?
I mean, I love Erin, but Kristen is just right downstairs. She'll come up and get me.
She'll come kill you. And then last one.
She's actually not.
Last one. What's next for Julia?
It's a really great question. I'm writing so many cool things right now that I'm incredibly excited about. I have a coaching business and like a screenwriting community called Scriptwell that I launched earlier this year that has just been so much fun, and also this new part of my brain that I've been accessing in order to kind of run it. So that's been really cool. I really want to grow that resource for screenwriters. I just want to like live life. I don't know. I want to go travel. I think the biggest thing last year was a year where it felt like a lot of stuff was happening to me. And I went on a solo trip to Paris at the end of last year just because I knew the holidays were going to be hard. And why not go to Paris? And I went, and it honestly felt so life-changing because it was like I made this happen for myself. It's not happening to me. It's not that I had to wait for all my friends to be ready and available to go. I just did this for myself. And I did whatever I wanted when I was there. And yeah, it was just like incredibly freeing. And that's not to say that I didn't, have a big cry on the streets of Paris, because I totally did. But it was still just like a really incredible trip. So more of that.
That's incredible. I feel like that's a great sentiment to end on. And where can people find you to follow along?
Well, clearly I'm on TikTok. You can go, it's at Julia Yorks on TikTok, at Julia Yorks on Instagram, at Julia Yorks Writer on YouTube. And if you're interested in screenwriting, just click on the link in my bio in any one of those platforms and check out Scriptwell or work with me one-on-one.
I love it. Awesome. Julia, thanks for coming on. This was so fun.
Thank you for having me.